This programme is sponsored by IG, official investment platform of England Cricket.
Cast is back after a little hiatus, and what a day to miss yesterday due to the global outage. It was a day of note for two things reasonably. So we might go back in time first, Athers and Butch, and talk about yesterday. One thing that certainly stood out for me was Mark Wood and pace, and some serious pace.
Absolutely. It was a fantastic day of Test cricket. First of all, after a really disappointing match at Lord's that was very uncompetitive, suddenly we got some really competitive cricket. Mark Wood was at the heart of it. He bowled exceptionally quickly in that first spell. I mean, there's great theatre when a fast bowler comes roaring in, and it's quite a quiet start, actually. You know, Gus Atkinson didn't find much with a new ball. There wasn't much swing for Chris Woakes. It was a bit flat here at Trent Bridge. It's a very kind of sedate and polite crowd usually. And then suddenly Mark Wood got the ball, and the crowd stirred really, because his first ball I think was 93 miles an hour, his second was 96, then he hit 97 at one point, and that is about as quick as you're going to get in any form of cricket. I mean, you know, we all played against quick bowlers, and I would put Brett Lee, Shoaib Akhtar and Alan Donald as the three quickest that I faced, but 97 is right up there with that. So he bowled quickly throughout the day. He's very unlucky. He passed the outside edge 20 times, we reckon, by the end of the day, and finished wicketless, luckless, really, but, yeah, provided some great theatre.
Yeah. Who's the quickest you faced, Butch?
Blimey, in Test matches, probably Brett Lee at the Wacker, down Doctor. But overall,
who cut you? That was
Matt Nicholson.
Put a few stitches in there,
I
didn't he?
I ended up captaining him. He was Surrey's overseas player, sort of at the back end of my career.
And he didn't get a run.
Bowled a lot into the wind. When I was
that's
his
what
captain.
I thought.
It was Andre Van Troost was the quickest bowler I ever faced, and I find it hard to believe that any human has bowled it faster than that guy. Used to play for Somerset, but yeah, I mean, it's brilliant. It's so good to watch. I mean, you obviously will all remember Headingley last year and the way that sort of changed the Ashes series around when England were 2-0 down. And there's something about Mark Wood in full flight that's incredible, because obviously you've got the sprint for the run-up, you've got him falling to the floor every time, you've got ball flying through to the keeper, late swing, the whole thing. So there's just so much happening when he's in the game. Batters hopping around. It's great.
One of the other great things yesterday was Kevin Hodge as well, going off to his maiden Test century. As the shot to bring up the runs for the 100 was the only shot really he'd hit down the ground. He played beautifully square. Butchie did a fantastic piece on it as well. It was a
great
real
partnership,
moment, wasn't it?
actually. Two batters from Dominica, tiny little island of what, 60 or 70,000 people. Haven't produced many Test match cricket, as West Indies is renowned for the big four islands, really: Barbados, Guyana, Trinidad, Jamaica producing most, and Antigua latterly, and suddenly Dominica's got these two lads in the middle order, Athanase and Kavem Hodge, and they both showed such character. I mean, we talked about Mark Wood bowling very quickly, and they had to absorb that pressure early on, withstand that pressure, and then eventually they threw a few punches of their own, and Butch did that piece on Kevin Hodge's back foot play, and yet to play well against a fast bowler bowling that quickly, you've got to be good on the back foot and good with the horizontal bat shots. And as you say, when he got that 100 moment, it was a fantastic moment. It let out this kind of Stokes running to the non-strikers end, and then leapt into the arms of Jason Holder,
which is a decent leap.
above him at 6'8", and you felt like Holder was just about to carry him under his arm and walk off celebrating with him to the dressing room. So it was wonderful.
It certainly was, and it meant that the West Indies were still trailing by 64 runs. He went on to hit 120, Kevin Hodge, but trailing by 64 at the start of today, and everything was well and truly set up as well. Mark Wood couldn't bowl because he had cramp the day before, so he couldn't bowl for 38 minutes. So it was over to Woakes and Gus Atkinson, and I think all eyes were on Chris Woakes because he didn't have the best of days.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of slowly trying to work himself back up into some sort of bowling fitness and rhythm. You'd think he was very much off the pace at Lord's, and he was very much off the pace for most of day one. But then, you know, playing cricket in England, you turn up on a particular day and suddenly the conditions are completely different from those that you faced the day before. And, you know, suddenly there was overcast skies. Woakes looked as though he had a little bit more pep in his stride, bowling from the Ratcliffe Road end, and suddenly got the ball talking, bowled magnificently well. England had 4 wickets in the blink of an eye, and it looked as though England were going to get a lead, albeit a slender one, on first innings. But as Joshua Da Silva has done before against England, once notably in Grenada to set up a win and a series win for the West Indies there, he stood firm. And then found an incredible partner in Shamar Joseph, who played 3 of the best shots of the entire match. And considering some of the batters that we've seen and some of the batting we've seen is quite something.
And considering his shot to go out at Lords, like I think most people in England who had never seen him bat before would think this guy can't bat, but he can bat.
Yeah.
And that kind of played into the sort of, it was very rare that you'd sort of say, oh, you know, perhaps Ben Stokes didn't quite get that right. But because he'd looked so sort of clueless at Lords, England decided, OK, well, we'll sit back and we only need to get a ball at him or maybe 2 balls at him. And, of course, the longer that goes on, Da Silva gets to sort of more of a net and finds himself in. Then he starts to find a bit of trust in the guy at the other end. And before you know it, you're chasing shadows. And the West Indies ended up with a very handy... actually, handy's not the right word, but an unlikely 41-run lead on first innings, which, you know, had they come out with the ball and been a little bit more on it than they were, could have proven to be something quite special for them in the Test match. As it is, I know I've jumped forward a little bit, but England have now sort of wrestled back that control on what looks to be still a pretty decent batting surface.
Yeah, partnership of 71 for the last wicket, so a lead of 41, and then it was over to the West Indian bowlers. We spoke about the West Indian batters not stepping up at Lords, and there was going to be a challenge for the bowlers now to do the same. How did you find that opening spell from the West Indies?
I don't think they've quite been at their best, actually, in the Test series so far. I mean, I have a high regard for Alzari Joseph, who is he's got everything, all the tools to make himself a very threatening bowler. I mean, he's tall. He was the fastest bowler in general at Lords. I think he was 87 on average, so he's sharp, and he's got beautiful shape on it when he gets it right. But as we said at Lords, he's come into this Test match series on the back of 3 or 4 months of bowling in T20. So you'd say that's not an ideal kind of prep, really. So he's just been a little bit inconsistent. Shamar's had issues with his body and cramping. Jayden Seales is the one who's disappointed me a bit in this game, because I thought he was by far the best of the bowlers at Lords. He's not. I think he struggled to bend Duckett. I mean, all the bowlers have struggled to bend Duckett because he scores so quickly and puts bowlers under pressure. But Jayden Seales' lines to Duckett have been very much both sides of the wicket. And in fact, Duckett's got England. I know Zach Crawley's got run out backing up here, but Duckett again got England off to a very positive start. The moment they're offline slightly, he really pounces. And we put up a table during our live coverage of openers with more than 1,000 Test runs and their strike rates, and Duckett's higher than anybody. And there have been some fantastic aggressive openers recently. Think David Warner, Virender Sehwag, and Duckett's quicker than them all. So you're slightly off with him, and he'll batter them.
You mentioned Zach Crawley. You got to feel for the guy, don't you? Because it's a good batting deck out there. He's been in some good form as well, and he gets a good one, 3rd ball of the day on day 1, and then is just backing up a little bit too far off the bowler's hand and out for 3.
And I don't think he was particularly at fault. I mean, you know, some might say, well, there's no point in backing up now with the Mancaddings and all the rest of it. But it was a perfectly reasonable piece of backing up. It's just that the fact that
criticism would be if he had his bat in the right hand, which is when you can get yourself into trouble and be a bit lazy. But he actually had it in the right hand. He got back smart.
In the left hand, which is the right hand. The left hand, the right hand, the correct hand.
The correct.
Yeah, but Duckett hit it so well.
Yeah.
It absolutely creamed it straight back.
Probably wasn't expecting the straight drive from Duckett.
I mean, exactly. I mean, that's been a real feature of Ben Duckett's game. He's obviously in terrific nick, because not only is he hitting the ball where you'd expect him to, square of the wicket, he's been smacking it straight back past the bowler as well, and Seales just got the lightest of touch on it, and Crawley was gone. And I mean, it's bad luck, but that's opening the batting, as it's going out in the top order. You can get a good one at any point and be gone without knowing whether you're in good form or bad form, and then you get a bit of bad luck in the second innings, and suddenly you've missed out on a plumb track and the fastest outfield in the West.
Yep. You were watching the guys about ready to come out in the start of the second session, and you went, I think they might come out swinging.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they were both stood, so the West Indies fielders were all out on the, on the boundary's edge, waiting for the umpires, and they were all ready. And England's batters were also stood there ready. And it wasn't something that Ath and I would ever have done back in the day. They were standing there basically laughing and joking and just practising swinging as hard as they possibly could before they came out. And Crawley started very positively, banged a drive back past the bowler for 3. Duckett, you would expect that from him anyway. You just felt that those two were going to come out and try and wipe off that deficit as quickly as possible. But of course, Crawley got sawn off before he had the chance to have a swing.
But they owned that middle session between Pope. Looks like he's sort of found his groove at number 3 and has really solidified that spot.
Yeah, he's had a good Test match, hasn't he? 100 in the first innings and 50 now in the second. Duckett a couple of 70s. And both were going well until another feature of this game has been the number of times we've seen ball changes. I mean, England got to their 4th old ball before they got to the 2nd new ball. And again, West Indies changed their ball, and that the change of ball and the slight delay suddenly worked in their favour. Pope got out the very next ball after the ball change, caught at gully. And Duckett not far after that. And suddenly then West Indies just had a sniff. England were about 90 ahead, 3 down, Root and Brook in. I think Root was on 1, Brook on none. And at that point, the game is very much in the balance. But it's been a terrific partnership between Root and Brook just to move things in England's favour again.
Certain batch of balls, I think they changed it 7 times today.
Amazing.
And you can only, I think from my understanding too, that batch of balls that they have can only be 12 months old, so it's...
Yeah, they have a 2023 stamp on them or something, yeah.
So, so that's one of the quirkiness.
The other thing, the reason why they're finding it difficult to find lots of replacement balls, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, why is there a shortage of balls? Because they're having to sort of use brand new balls for throwdowns and then bring those out, so they're not necessarily 40 overs old or 30 overs old. It's because England so very rarely these days bat beyond, 80, 90 overs. So do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
There are not that many second new balls that have been taken that then go back in the box as spares for some other time.
Yeah.
So there's an issue, an unforeseen issue with the way that England bat and how fast they're batting, and the fact that there's not enough balls of the right age to swap over when they go out of shape.
I was on with Nas, and he made the point about whether a ball really should be in worse condition before you change it. I mean, obviously the umpires have their hoops, and if the ball doesn't go through and sits in it, they should change. But they don't look in bad nick, many of these. They just look slightly out of shape. And if you're bashing the ball to the boundary, it's going to have some effect on it. Anyway, the ball change worked for West Indies.
It certainly did.
The bowlers would turn around and say, well, why should a batter be allowed to change his bat for a crack in it or whatever?
Yeah.
You have that whole batters versus bowlers nonsense.
Pope had to change his today.
I know.
His bat fell off.
If it'd been made to carry on with that, it would have been a bit of a nightmare. But you know what I mean. I don't think that there's any issue with it. It would just be nice if it wouldn't happen so often.
Have we seen a little bit of temperance when it comes to the phrase baseball in this series, and particularly in this test?
I think in this series we've just seen a slightly mature approach from England. They're rattling along by historic norms. They're scoring at 5 and over.
5 plus, yeah.
And that's rapid by Test match rate. But it hasn't felt...
chaotic.
Chaotic. And actually, just listening to Ben Duckett, who gave quite a nice interview to Nas on the second morning, I think, after his 70 in the first innings, because England have been criticised at times, not just for their gung-ho approach, but their gung-ho words around Test matches. Last series against India, there was a Test match where Ben Duckett just said, India can score as many as they like, we'll just chase anything. And people were kind of scratching their head thinking, come on, get real. Whereas he gave a very nice and mature interview. He said, look, I got 70, I was disappointed not to get more, I'm always looking for a big score. And you just felt it was sensible cricket talk. And the way England have played has been aggressive and positive and on the front foot, but not reckless. And they've got themselves into another decent position now.
Yeah, so back-to-back 70s for Ben Duckett. It was the first time that Ollie Pope's hit 5 consecutive 50s as well, coming off the back of Lords and then the 120 in the first innings as well. Harry Brook comes out, and there was chat during the Ashes, the Australians bowled short to him. We've spoken about it quite a bit on Sky Sport Cricket on the commentary about the amount of times he's gone out to the short ball. Usually, though, he's in around sort of probably that 50, 60 runs anyhow.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about it, and I wouldn't want people to think we've made a big thing of it, because I don't think it's a particular problem for Harry Brook. I think he's a brilliant young player. It's just that, as with any really good player, opposition teams are going to look at them and try and find a little chink in the armour, a little bit of weakness. Where is there a possibility of just causing a little bit of confusion in this young player's mind? And that's just one area we've looked at, and it's really we're slightly clutching at straws because his record is so good. He's averaging over 60 in Test cricket. And, you know, there are some players that you really do. You know, Sachin Tendulkar, who we played against, I don't think we ever got to a stage where we came up with any particular plan that, you know, we can get this guy out. Well, bowl down his backside for 3 hours.
Over the wicket, left arm spin as wide of leg stump as possible until eventually he got so bored he ran past when he got stumped for the only time in his career.
I mean, that's a problem for Harry Brook, but it's just an area that, because the moment he came in, they put a short leg in, they put 2 men back, they put a fly slip in. So, you know, teams are looking at that and thinking, well, this is how we're going to have a crack at him. Yeah.
And how do you think he should play it? Because it's obviously going to be something he's going to have to face, isn't it?
I think the only reason that it's become a bit of an issue is because he's so... he and England are so on the front foot that the only thought is, no matter where the ball is, where can I score? So he finds himself in funny positions or trying to hit the ball in places where it really ought not to be going, and has been getting out in that way. It's not like people have been running up and bumping him and he's taking his eye off it and flinching and it's going to short leg. And I think, you know, I think it comes down to eventually any batter, no matter what your sort of approach is or what your team's approach is, you'll go back to your room and go, you know what, I've given it away a bit there. I'll find a better way of dealing with that and make them bowl the ball somewhere where I'd much rather it be, you know, and the way to do that is not to get out flapping at it every time someone bowls you a bumper. Yeah,
well, the partnership between Brook and Root has just ticked on to 3 figures. They're now at 100, England leading by 199, so they're 240 for 3. It was getting quite murky, probably.
This has been a terrific partnership. It's been, if you think we'll mention where they were. I think the lead was only 90 when they came together. Floodlights on, clouds very low. That ball that they changed was moving a bit. West Indies had their tail up at that point. So this is not a partnership where you're well ahead in the game, runs are easy, the field is set back, and you're thinking these are kind of easy runs. Not that any runs are really easy in Test cricket, but this partnership is fashioned out of tough circumstances. So all credit to the 2 Yorkie lads.
And Butch, I guess that goes to a little bit about the commentary about the maturity of the team now. They know they've got these gears that they can ramp up, but for now, they just took a little bit of doggedness.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. I think also the West Indies have given them perhaps a little bit of a wake-up call by playing the way they did in the first innings, you know. Because I think if you're being unbelievably harsh, you'd say that England probably could have put the game to bed first innings with a little bit less bravado and a little bit more of the type of approach they've shown in the second innings. They've had to do it in the second innings because they found themselves a bit behind. They know the surface is very good, and I think these are all good lessons. And as Michael said, they're still scoring at 4 runs and over. They're just doing it in a slightly more controlled manner, and a manner in which you're not constantly giving the opposition a chance to get back into the game by giving wickets away. And you know, at the end of it all, if you're going to beat the very best sides, you can't afford to keep giving them a free ticket back in the matches. Sometimes you have to shut them out.
Yeah. Well, let's cast our eyes forward because we've got about 3 minutes before the end of play here. England leading by 201. We were chatting today about the third innings being the toughest innings to bat because you're trying to set the game up, aren't you? So Brendan McCullum, Ben Stokes overnight, what are they thinking in terms of how to set this game up and how they're going to play, particularly in that first session?
Well, the lead is 201 now, so we've got 6 sessions left. The thing about this pitch at Trent Bridge is that you don't really see it deteriorate. It's not going to be a stinking pitch to bat on day 5. So England will want that lead to be upwards of 400 plus, which means, 2 sessions probably batting tomorrow, looking at an ideal scenario for England. West Indies will obviously want to come out and get early wickets tomorrow and change that. change that situation. But England will be looking at bowling, tea time just after, give themselves 4 sessions to bowl West Indies out.
Yeah, nodding away there, Butch.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Again, there's so much time left in the game still, and given the rate at which England will score naturally without having to sort of put their foot down, that's around about the timescale. And if they do bat until tea and that the West Indies start to flag a little bit, then that run scoring rate will only go up, and then the target will end up being bigger. So I think they've done a terrific job here. I think the one thing, I suppose, from a West Indies point of view, and where they've missed a really kind of senior bowler, or even a sort of slightly more demonstrative figure as a leader out there, is there have been moments in this afternoon session where there was a window for them and they kind of missed it. You know what I mean? The intensity kind of wasn't quite there. The sharpness in terms of executing the right line and length to the batters wasn't quite there, and it's kind of gone now. There was a period where Joe Root was really bothered by the light, and he kept going to the umpire and sort of, looking like England wanted to go off. And he thought, OK, you get 10 minutes here, nip out 2, and then if you do go off for the light, you're in fabulous shape. And they've kind of missed it, and I wonder if that opportunity now has gone for them.
Yep. One of the other big ticket items that has actually been brought up right throughout this Test match that I do want to ask you about, Michael Atherton. We've chatted about the 100 and ownership, we've chatted about a lot of things, but every single day you've questioned the blazer with the T-shirt. So I just wanted to chat through, we're going to finish with a little bit of fashion here. You're not a happy man, are you?
We can't say anything because Stuart Broad's about to give us a free dinner at his pub.
I was going to be...
So we're all piling down to the Tap and Run, which is about 15 minutes from Nottingham. He's told us that the beer is excellent and the food is good.
That's wisdom right there.
So I think the blazer and T-shirt look is bang on.
Until tomorrow. And then it starts.
We'll get stuck into him again.
If you're in Miami Vice.
So we've looked ahead a little bit for England, Butch, in terms of the West Indies and bowling tomorrow. They're probably thinking exactly the same thing, aren't they? That England's probably going to be looking in and around that tea time.
Yeah, I mean,
they've got to have a crack in the morning.
Yeah,
don't never give it away.
Don't wait for a declaration. See if you can force the game. End up bowling England out for less than they might have wanted, and then summon up the same sort of courage and skills they did in the first innings with the bat, and you never know. But they're certainly not out of the game yet, but things are starting to look tricky for them.
Yeah, we haven't seen too much of spin today. Craig Braithwaite, the skipper's on at the moment, seeing out the end of the day. Spinners for both sides over these next couple of days?
Well, Bashir will have a role to play. He had a role to play actually first time around because Stokes gave him a very extended spell. I think it was a 17-over spell either side of lunch on that first innings. Kind of the foil to the quicker bowlers that we've talked about. But then his role shifts towards the end of the game. There's a bit more expectation on him in terms of a wicket-taking role. He picked up 2, but the wickets he got were when West Indies were having a dip at him. And he's going to, if they get well ahead, England, and they have plenty of runs on the board, 400 on the board, say, then Shoaib Bashir role becomes a more attacking role with men round the bat and hoping to get a little bit of purchase on towards the end of the 4th day and 5th day. But he's young, and we always have to bear that in mind. He's barely played a season's worth of cricket. So each opportunity for him is a learning opportunity.
It certainly is. And on those wise words to finish things up, it's also the finish of day 3 as well. England 248 for 3. That is a lead of 207. Joe Root 37 not out. Harry Brook yet again runs for England. He's 71 not out, and it is all set up for day 4. Tap and run. Off we go.
Tap and run.
Let's do it.
We'll get our T-shirts and blazers on for tomorrow, just for Athers, and we hope to see you back here at the back end of play for day 4. Thanks for joining us.